50,000 Palestinians have died, 13,000 children, almost 97,000 injured. United Nations, human rights organizations such as Amnesty International have all declared this as one of the genocide of the 21st century.
This is a video of Jordan Peterson talking about Israel-Palestine at Oxford University. You do not want to miss this video. Stick around for the whole thing. Let's talk about it after. And please share what you think in the comments section, because I think that it is important we continue this dialogue in the comments section on YouTube.
The Israel-Gaza war. On October 7, 2023, you tweeted, "Give them hell, Netanyahu." Since October 7, 50,000 Palestinians have died, 13,000 children, almost 97,000 injured. United Nations, human rights organizations such as Amnesty International have all declared this as one of the genocide of the 21st century. Are you satisfied with your tweet? And did you get what you're asking for?
Well, you might describe that as a loaded question. I would say that I'm not satisfied about anything that's happened on October 7th or in the aftermath. You'd have to be a fool to be satisfied with it. So, of course I'm not satisfied. What was the appropriate response to October 7th? Bring out the feather bed? The kid gloves? Not precisely. What happened on October 7th was a catastrophe. And it was obviously not something that could be ignored. And you might say, well, what's the right way forward? Well, there's a Canadian poet, Leonard Cohen, he said, "There's no decent place to stand in a massacre." You can find yourself in a situation where there have been so many mistakes made by you and by everyone around you that all of your alternatives are horrible. And that's what happens when war breaks out. And so, no, you'd be a fool to be satisfied with that. But there are situations where all the options are terrible. And you might say, well, how did those situations come about? And you'll certainly experience this in your own life. If you aim badly enough and you make enough mistakes, especially mistakes that are part and parcel of your own blindness and foolishness, you'll find yourself in a situation where, well, it's a situation that's akin to hell. Well, every single option in front of you is brutal and awful. And so how do you endeavor to conduct yourself so that you don't find yourself there? It's like you watch your bloody step and you keep your eyes open and you pray that you're not foolish enough to embroil yourself in some catastrophe. And so, well, we're way past that whenever a war breaks out, obviously. There wouldn't be a war, I suppose, as well, as if people didn't disagree profoundly about how they might proceed. And it's not like I have any simple solutions to the constant catastrophe of the Middle East, and neither does anyone else. But I suppose that's also why I'm interested in psychology more than politics, because I actually think that the solution to such things is worked out at the level of the individual and not at the level of the state, even though the state has to involve itself, I suppose, when individual responsibility is abdicated. So no, of course I'm not satisfied. Who would be satisfied? So
I want to follow up more on an ideological question there as well. You have outspoken about censorship, ideological conformity, and authoritarianism, especially when it comes to free speech, the ability to say what you want, to stand for things. But one thing, especially within the Western ideals, we have seen a double standard when it comes to critiques and those vocal voices speaking for Palestinian rights. In the last 2 years, students protesting, protests have been curbed, mass surveillances, whether in the UK or the United States. Why have you not condemned this suppression of free speech? Is this not a textbook case
There's
of
been very little bloody evidence of free speech suppression, for example, in this issue in my country, in Canada, there's been a plethora of demonstrations on the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine side. And so the idea that that's been squelched somehow is preposterous. There were literal encampments for months in my university, in University of Toronto. And I can't imagine a situation where a more contentious issue had been allowed more free expression than the protests that emerged in the aftermath of October 7th. So I see no evidence whatsoever for a double standard. Quite the contrary, I would say. In the West, there's been more freedom of speech for the purveyors of the pro-Palestinian message than there are in many Arab countries, for example. And so I don't see for a second that there's a double standard. Now, does that mean that there's even-handed and perfect justice at every moment with regards to all of the elements of discourse around October 7th? Well, obviously not, because nothing is perfect. But to construe that as prejudice on the part of the West, particularly in relationship to the legacy media of the universities, if anything, they've erred on the opposite side. And we've seen a dreadful rise in, say, anti-Semitic sentiment and so forth in the aftermath of October 7th. So I think the notion that there's a double standard that's differentially punished those who rose to support the Palestinian cause, I think that's a preposterous claim. I don't see any evidence for that at all.
Well, let me give you some evidence. I mean, supporters of Palestinians, especially students in the US and this country, were blacklisted. In Harvard, Columbia, students were not allowed to graduate. They were not given their degrees just for the sake of protesting outside universities. Surely these are examples of double standards.
It wasn't a consequence of protesting. It was a consequence of conducting themselves in an absolutely atrocious manner. There's rules of conduct for protest, and the students did everything they could to provoke the authorities, most of whom are in an ideological position to support the protest movements that we described a priori. They behaved so atrociously that even the idiot authorities who were charged with regulating the behavior of students on campus were finally forced to do something about it. It had nothing to do with differential treatment of the protesters. I mean, how long were there encampments at the University of Toronto? Like 3 months? Like, that's not tolerance, and that's not even free speech. That's weakness in the face of... It's weakness in the face of preposterously narcissistic and coercive behavior. And so I don't buy any of the presumptions that underlie that question.
I come from the sports and basketball world. And as a fan of the Boston Celtics, I'm allowed to go to a Boston Celtics game. And let's say that they're playing the Los Angeles Lakers. If I'm sitting near Los Angeles Lakers fans, we are obviously rooting for opposing teams. I'm allowed to disagree with them. I'm allowed to shout at them. I'm allowed to maybe talk a little bit of smack. But there is a limit at which I am allowed to be verbally violent. There's a limit at which I'm allowed to shout certain slurs or words or sayings or phrases. There's a limit at which I'm allowed to be an opposing fan inside of that arena, according to the TD Garden, where there are rules of conducting myself, as a sports fan at that game. Same goes for that person. You can be passionate about your sports team, the player, the arena, whatever team it is. But there is a limit at which you are allowed to conduct yourself if there is another person there who doesn't have the same team on their back, on the front or back of their jersey. If you do not obey by that code of conduct, there are consequences. The arena is allowed to ask you to leave. They're allowed to take you outside for questioning. They're allowed to potentially fine you. It says it all on the ticket. It says it all in the small fine print on the TD Garden website, as it is the same for anywhere at any other sports game. If you go to a Red Sox game at Fenway Park, if you go anywhere to Madison Square Garden in New York City, there are fans at NBA games who have said things to NBA players on courtside that the NBA players heard. They stop the game, they tell the referee or they tell management, and I've seen people get escorted out of the game who are banned from going back to that arena for saying things that are racist, for saying things that are just absolutely crossing the line. The anti-Israel protesters at these universities are not being banned from graduating or being banned from campus because they were protesting. They're being banned from campus or banned from graduating because of vile behavior. Sorry, you can't just do what you want. You're allowed to protest. You're allowed to say you don't agree with something, but you have to do it according to conduct. And if you don't obey by the conduct, sorry, there are consequences. And it's mind-blowing to me that at a university like Oxford University, Jordan Peterson has to sit on stage and explain this, and you see him get frustrated at the end of this video, and he's sitting there and he's just like, why do I have to explain this to these prestigious students? Clearly this prestige, this level of academia here, sure, 4.0 in the books, but when it comes to the street smarts, boy oh boy do they have a lot of learning to do. It's insane to me that people don't understand this, that they think that they can just get away with it just because they feel like they're fighting for a just cause. No. That's not how the world works. You need to wake up. Thank you so much for all your support. I'll see you next video. If you want to continue the conversation, you can support my work for free. Discord does not cost a thing. It is the best way to connect with me and others who are seeking the truth. The link is in the description. But if you want to take it one step further, my Patreon gives you access to the Israel you don't see, uncovering the untold stories of what mainstream media does not show you. The link is in the description and it helps me to continue this work. Or if you're just looking to help this thing go, PayPal and buy me a coffee is a really easy way to support me. This channel, this work does not happen without all of you. Thank you. I love you. I'll see you next time.